In this video we'll turn scrap wood into processed wood into a multi-level table for these discerning customers. Set your table saw to height for the first part of this video. It's going to be milling down all of these old fence boards into usable lumber. Now if you don't have a table saw, you could buy pre-processed lumber, dimensional lumber from your big box store. That would make this a little bit easier, but I'm going to mill all of this down just to make use of it. I like to recycle timber wherever I can. So we've milled down the first side, now we've flipped it over to the easier second side because we've got a straight edge to work against. And now we're going to split the timber in half. Once we have these all split in half, we should end up with 12 separate strips. We can now start milling off side 3 and cleaning up this edge of the boards. Okay, nice. Now we've got almost all edges done, so let's clean off the fourth and final side. Okay, and we're done with 12 consistent clean boards. Now let's cut down the legs to size. I've already set the table saw to be the same as the width of this, the narrow side of this piece of wood. So when I run this down here, it will be perfectly square. Okay, cool. Now again, we've got 6 perfectly symmetrical, perfectly square legs. We're going to want to round off some of the corners here, so I'm going to use my El Cheapo router table. What do you think about this? Feels a bit sketchy to me.
That would be no bueno.
Okay, so this featherboard here, it's slightly less sketchy. Cool, so now we have rounded over legs and rounded over stringers, just on one side for the stringers. Everybody loves sanding, not me. So set up your stop block and cut your stringers to length. We want each stringer to be identical to the next. That will give us a nice square table. So here you can see in a sec the pile of identical stringers we've now created. Use the same stop block technique to cut the legs to length. And once we have all of these cut and a couple of scrap bits, time to do a dry test fit to see if everything lines up as expected. We want to keep this build really simple, so in terms of the joints we'll be using, we're going to use butt joints and pocket holes to hold everything together. Sorry for the bad focus here. So drill pocket holes to attach the stringers to the legs, and also perpendicular pocket holes to attach the stringers to the tabletops. That will keep everything nice and tight. So to stain everything up, we're going to use an American walnut wood dye, and we've laid out some polythene on our table here to allow us to just spread this on without having to worry about any spillages onto our work surface. So this took us 2 coats to get it to this stage. So lay your pieces out for a test fit. And in terms of pocket hole screws, I really like these Star or Torx head screws. Can't speak highly enough of these. It's a good idea to drive in your screws a little bit so they're nice and stable. And now we're going to start assembly. We're going to glue and screw all of the joints together. I'm using this little board to help keep things nice and level. And we're going to use these spacer blocks to keep all of the tables perfectly consistent. So clamp everything up, not too tight. Check that everything is square, make any adjustments that you might need to make, and then screw these together. One other benefit of using pocket holder screws here is that you can reuse the clamps. You don't need to leave the clamps on the pieces of wood until the glue sets. You can just take it out, clean up any spillage, and then use the clamp again for the next piece. So this is what we have so far, all of the legs put together. And now it's time to start gluing and screwing and attaching the stringers to one of the long sides of the table. Get everything nice and square. That's critical at every stage of this build. This is what we look like with some stringers attached to some of the legs. And next we start attaching the opposite legs to those stringers and start piecing everything together. It's a bit of a rinse and repeat process, which is nice, and everything is the same size anyway, until you get to this stage of having essentially the table built. Now we're going to measure up for our tabletops. We'd like a little bit of overhang of maybe 1 inch on all 4 sides. So we measure that and cut up some spare plywood we had to make our 4 separate tabletops. So here we have our 4 identical tabletops. Now we're going to do a little bit of a test fit to check that the overhang is okay. We need to cut out the corners. Nothing on the top one, 2 on the second table, and 4 on the next 2 tables. I wonder, could I do anything with these offcuts? Okay, now that we have the corners cut out, let's do one last test fit before we start adding the carpet to the tops of these tables. I really didn't enjoy cutting out and stapling the carpet. It was such a pain, I didn't even manage to film it, so sorry about that. But here's the final product. Let's hope our client really likes it. Okay, great. Looks like the cats like it. So if you did too, please do like and subscribe.